Today, our topic is connection, powering up in community. And I think Dr. Michelle and I, at the same time, kind of had an aha that since the talk was on community, we might as well have a community sharing of the pulpit today. Dr. Roger, too, has been on such a roll, it might take two of us to try and match up there as well. And I just want to start by saying I'm so honored to share the stage with Michelle. We've known each other for over 20 years. When I first met Michelle, she had just started in her ministry, and she's been serving as a minister. This year is 26 years in ministry, right? Isn't that amazing? I've been so grateful to know her and so grateful to have this dialogue with you today. And I'll just begin by asking Michelle, how did you really find your spiritual connection?
Okay. I found it in community, and I'm also honored to be sharing this time with Reverend Josh. He's been such an impressive young man since I met you in Huntington Beach. I was so always impressed with you, always loved being with you, and wanted to enfold you in our family in every way that I could. So it's great that we get to enfold each other in family here now in this ministry. So welcome. Thank you. And it is community. I am a community person. I think most people who attend church or spiritual community in some way are often divinely attracted to that. I remember from the time I was a little one being very attuned to the universe in some way, my own sense of spirituality, and actually led my family to church as I found a little friend was going to a Christian church, and I asked if I could please go. And so my parents let me go, though they weren't churchgoers at the time. And I loved church and all that came with it, and being in community was clearly very important to me, a yearning that I had intuitively. And I think a lot of us have a yearning for communing and connecting with other beings. And so it was then, as I moved to Denver and grew older in the Catholic Church, I was blessed to have a priest who encouraged me in community to develop my own sense of the cosmology and the nature of the universe, and a mother who always encouraged me. And so I began to read at a very early age, as I bet you did too, some spiritual books, some kind of off the beaten track books about oneness and God being everywhere and in everything. And I remember after reading these books when I was 13, going to my mother and saying, "Mom, is there a church where people believe this?" And she said, "No." And then she added, "And if there is, they're the fringe people." And kind of said, "We're not going there." And I said, "Okay." So for 2 more years, we studied and talked, conversed late at nights about the universe. I still had this yearning in me to be with people who believed like I did, who were open like I felt. And so finally, my mother was in the real estate business here in Denver, and all her realtor friends finally said, "You're kind of strange like those people over at Mile High Church." So we wandered in here on a Wednesday night service, and I knew I was home. And you've heard that story if you've been in the membership classes or in classes with me. But what I recognize about your question, Josh, is that I feel like from a spiritual standpoint, my spiritual growth began to thrive when I took root in community here at Mile High Church. There was a rootedness that happened. It was like I suddenly became this flower that rooted into the community and began to bloom voraciously from a spiritual standpoint. And it came through being with other like-minded beings, serving and sharing and volunteering here. It came in taking classes and philosophizing and debating and questioning together and hearing the teachers. It came in being a practitioner and being able to be of service to people. It came even, interestingly enough, in conflict and challenge, right? Because even though we're a bunch of spiritual people, we also can run into each other occasionally in ways that we experience the shadow self, as you mentioned, or the not self, the place where we're not totally 100% able to be as functional as we would like. And great spiritual growth came for me in that regard too, because every contact and every relationship has its gifts and its opportunities. So it really was born out of community that I can say that I really thrived. I think that Dr. Raz says it best when he talks about recovery doesn't occur in a vacuum. It occurs in community, right? And so for me, that's what Mile High Church has been. That's what spiritual community has been for me, a place to thrive and grow and deepen. How about for you, Josh?
Well, I love that. I love that this was a place for you to plant yourself and grow. And that was someone that was ready, a place that was ready for a powerful woman, ready to say yes to Spirit's call in her own heart to become the powerful presence that you are. I always joke, kind of growing up in the church, all my ministers were female. Yeah. And so it took me a while to realize that a white male could be a minister one day. So, great
That's
mentorship.
a great mental equivalent, isn't it?
And for me, when I first came to this spiritual philosophy, to be honest, it was kind of all about me. It was about there being a power for good in the universe, and I'm going to use it to get as much stuff as possible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I prayed, and in many senses, that stuff kind of worked. God, give me a great job. God, bring me a great relationship. And what would happen is I'd get those things, but something be off. I'd get the job, but my heart wouldn't be in it. I'd get a relationship, but something be squirrely. My heart wasn't open enough. I'd pray for a spiritual opening and awakening, and yet I'd still feel kind of blocked off in here. Mm-hmm. And for me, the real connection took place when I really got that spirituality isn't about getting stuff for myself, but it's wanting the highest and best, not just for myself, but for everybody, for everyone. That the purest prayer is when not only can I pray and accept a higher good for myself, but also include everybody in it. There's an old Ernest Holmes quote that I love in his book, This Thing Called You. He says, if you want to stay out of hell, then no one can ever be in it. If you want to stay out of hell, then no one can ever be in it. That's still hard for me today because I got a pretty long list of people I'd like to send there sometimes, but...
Didn't you call it your go-to-hell list at the last service?
Yes, I think that's it. Check.
Check.
But I think what we all know is that Emerson was right. We're not punished for our sins. We're punished by our sins. And when I'm spending time in judgment about somebody else, making myself a victim because I've been wronged in some way, not only am I limiting who I am, is that dislike of other people, that judgment, it's poison for me. It's bringing myself down. And if it's true that if I want to stay out of hell, then no one can be in it, I think it follows to be true that if I want to be in heaven, if I want to live in heaven, then no one can ever be left outside of it. That I truly have to commit myself to live in such a way that doesn't just want the highest and best for myself, but the highest and best for everyone. That doesn't mean when I pray for a new car that I need to pray for Jack to get that car too. It's that idea that when I'm really sincere in my heart, when I'm truly living as who I am, I'm really opening myself to experience good in a grander way and in a way of community, because that's how it got going for me is I think that connection started when I started being of service in a church. And three things that really helped me to do to evolve my spirituality was to realize, first of all, that good isn't limited, that there's more than enough good for everyone. The second is that I didn't have to try and be somebody special. I'm already a precious child of God, but I don't need to be me, God. Give me this that I want. I could know it for everybody. And lastly, I could learn, or came to learn, that when I really commit myself to my highest good, when I truly live it, not only is it the highest and best good for me, it's the highest and best good for everyone as well. That's been the hardest lesson. I'm still learning that today. But that's how I really got my sense of connection going.
That's beautiful. And what I love about that is that you also can see the wisdom of serving the tribe and serving yourself. And then also we recognize that going beyond what appears to be the tribe too in service, right?
Yes, showing up everywhere. And right. I often joke there's some truth to it. I got so into being of service, that's part of why I became a minister. But if I wasn't a minister, I might not go to church. That was the way my personality was. I was one to hide away in the back. But stepping into service allowed me not only to be a blessing, but to truly and fully get blessed in my life. Have you found that to be true for you too?
Absolutely, yes. We're having Christiane Northrup here this Friday night, and I'm really looking forward to her presence here. And I found a quote from her that I love. She says, "We are all hungry for genuine connection and caring, and we will not get this unless we find our soul's tribe." So I think what we can both say about this is that we found our soul's tribe within religious science, within the community here that we practice, but then something began to happen. And it was a recognition for me that, I didn't want to just hide out in this tribe. I didn't want to just hide out in here, that I began, it felt like the more I leaned into and felt the true connection and the oneness of all creation, I am energized by this particular tribe, but that energy not only insulates me here, but it invites me to go beyond this place. What I began to recognize is that my soul is happy because I found you all. I'm happy here in my tribe and my community, and I feel like I'm the best version of myself when I'm here.
Yeah,
because I love and care for everyone.
And that's what I love about it too. It's getting to be the best version of myself. And I love what you said about sometimes spiritual community, everything isn't hunky-dory.
Yes.
Sometimes there is disharmony, but there's something about the way we are together and the way that we commit to communicate with one another and listen, that in spiritual community, we're not only engaging in a sacrament in the sense of experiencing the divine in ourselves and each other, but we're also participating in being an example of how to live in the world in a great way. And what I love about this church, and I won't talk about other churches, but it's a little different, is here, everyone here is whole. This is a church of healthy, whole individuals, right?
Right.
Everybody's like,
Right.
let me check about that.
Got the checklist of what's wrong with life, right?
Right. We're not a church of empty people seeking to get filled up. We're not a church of broken people. That doesn't mean we don't come here hurting sometimes or feeling broken, but deep down we know that we're whole. And the reason that we come here isn't to fix something that's broken. It's to express that wholeness with one another. It's to celebrate life, and it's to treat each other with a deep and profound kindness that reverberates in every area of our lives. There's an old Zen story that I really love about a young monk who's made a commitment to transcribe the Buddha's words, the sutras, onto wooden blocks. And it's an expensive project, and so he saves and saves and finally gets enough money after 10 years to start the project, but there is a famine in the village. And so he makes the difficult decision to spend the money on food to help the people in his village survive. So he starts the fundraising all over again. Does this sound familiar? I know we've done some fundraising here from time to time. And he finally, 10 years later, has the money again, but this time there's a great illness that goes across the land, and he decides to spend the money on medicine to help all the people of the village. And so 10 years later, he finally gets all the money. They inscribe the sutras on these beautiful wooden blocks, and this was a long time ago. These blocks still exist today, and when parents bring their children to see them, they say, there are 3 sets of sutras. This is the third. The first 2 are invisible, and yet they're the most important. And that speaks to me a lot about who we are as spiritual community. We have big goals as a church. We want to fundamentally transform how we treat each other in this world. We fundamentally want to transform so that we have a more inclusive world, a world of better communication, a world where we can live from vision and from heart. And that's a great calling in our life to step into, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of charge, and it takes a lot of treating people. We want to do the big things, but it's also the little things that matter too. I love a quote from Jean Vanier, which will show up here on the screen. And Jean Vanier was a Christian mystic in Canada who did great work working with the disabled. And he said, "We are not called by God to do extraordinary things, but to do ordinary things with extraordinary love." So let's not forget, while we're changing the world, to look each other in the eye. Let's not forget, while we're forming a grand vision of doing great things in our life, to not forget to be a good listener, to care for each other, to show up and be a presence in everyday life. And that, to me, is how we really bring community and our own personal vision together with our collective vision. And do you have any thoughts on that, Michelle?
Yeah, I think it's important. A lot of the things that we identify as the problems in the world are because people have isolated themselves into groups and agreed that they're right and everyone else is wrong. And we must be cautious that we don't do that too. For as much as we love this teaching, and I know I do, a huge growth came in my life when I realized that, as I was saying earlier, that I love this spiritual community and I feel safe and I feel happy here. But then when I went out into the world, I wasn't always my same self. I wasn't consistent. And so one practice is I began to ask myself, who would I be when I go to the grocery store if I pretended that every person I see is a part of my tribe, is a part of my spiritual family? Who would I be if I went to the gas station, if I went to the bank, when I go to the movie theater? Who would I be if I were to not just save my shiny Michelle for you all and gave my shiny Michelle everywhere? What if I was a beneficial presence everywhere? And there's something about busting up that mental equivalent for me and saying, look, for us, this is our home, this is our tribe, and we choose consciously not to go out and recruit necessarily to bring people here, although feel free to do that if you like, but not to change other people's minds, but to be a living example of the vision that we are together, our individual vision and our collective vision. If I go out and treat every person as though they're my family. And when I started doing that, the only complaint I got was from my introverted son. And his mantra to me still is, to this day, is, Mom, do you have to talk to everybody? And my answer is, yeah, I do. I do. I choose to look, as you say, look people in the eye, to be loving and respectful, to speak to them if my heart feels called, to support, to affirm, even people that I know I might not agree with religiously, politically, from a standpoint of life. I choose to be the vision that I think this teaching and this church is about beyond the walls of this place, and stand in harmony with that.
And part of what I hear from that, except I really do like sparkly Michelle. When I do run into a congregant in the grocery store, I love it, but I do kind of hide because what's in Reverend Josh's cart?
Yeah.
2 pints of chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. How much junk food is in there? Right. But for me, you are the vision of this church.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to read some statements on the board, but it's another thing to know that you are them. In our mission statement, we say that we are a spiritual beacon. But guess what? You're a spiritual beacon. I know that we say we are a sanctuary where all are welcome. But guess what? You're a sanctuary where all are welcome. We say that we are a safe place for listening and authenticity and growth. Well, you are a safe place. And if not, ask yourself, am I a safe place for listening? Am I a sanctuary where everyone can feel welcome? Am I a spiritual beacon for the truths that I have been blessed with here, and am I committed to bring them about in a greater way in my life? Today's about vision, and part of our journey of faith is articulating a profound vision for our church and for our personal lives, and we want to include everybody in today, not just me and Michelle, and so we've got some video messages of some people who are articulating their vision for Mile High Church and their own personal life. So let's watch it.
What is my vision for Mile High? Just to be the beacon for empowerment and personal empowerment and growth for everybody, so that everybody expands their lives to the greatest that they can possibly achieve.
A community that is always comfortable for everyone and anyone to be able to come and to be able to feel a part of it all.
To continue to be a beacon of light for so many people, and to just be such a knowledge base.
My vision would be continue to share that vision, that we would like to have more and more people feel the oneness that we have here. Yeah.
Love, peace, community, excitement, education. That's where it's all at.
I love the people here, and I love the scenery and how nice people are, and I hope it stays the same throughout today, tomorrow, and for several years to come.
It continues to spread its light throughout the world. That's my vision.
Oh, thank you. there's this beautiful thing that happens. See, when we begin to access our own inner light and begin to feel vision having its way with us, then coming to a place like this anchors us and plugs us in. And so each one of us, for the vision that we have for our life and how we would like to serve humanity, whether it's to be of a certain expression of love or even to do a certain career or foundation or way that we generously give, it gets enlivened by just being present here, by participating in the community. But then we have the added joy of the shared collective vision that we have for what our church is and can be in the world that also inspires us, lifts us up, and pulls us forth. I love how Dr. Roger says to us when members join the church that this isn't Mile High Church and its members, it's Mile High Church as its members. So it's important for us to come here to participate in up-leveling our own lives, but also to collectively up-level the energy of Mile High Church in a powerful way, in shared vision. Part of the sizzle of our community is not just what happens here, the music and the ministers. Dr. Roger, he's Dr. Sizzle for sure. Dr. Roger is the sizzle that we all love and that enlivens us. And we are that sizzle. We together are what lifts up this place and allows us to go forth and express our shared vision in powerful ways. So just as those people in the video did today, we're asking you to share your vision with us about how you see Mile High Church expressing itself. How does Mile High Church, what is the highest vision of what we can do and be together? And when you go to the community center today, outside, because it's such a lovely day, you'll find a group of people there. They have these cards, and we're going to ask you to share your sense of the vision with us, just like you heard in the videos. Then we're going to ask you to take another step. They have these great ribbons there today that look like this, and you're going to be invited to write a word that represents your vision for our community on this ribbon and then tie it to the fence out there. Did you see some of those ribbons when you came in today, many of you? So you're going to add to these ribbons, and we're going to see a wall of colorful vision emerge, and the ministers and our board of trustees and our leadership, we're going to read every one of these visions and begin to coalesce together and invite everyone to participate in sharing your vision with us today. I look forward to it.
It sounds awesome, and I love projects like this, and maybe you've had the experience like me. I get a huge warm and fuzzy at church. I get a huge inspiration of vision, and then Monday it's sometimes can feel kaput. Do you have any advice on something that we can do in our everyday lives to maintain and keep in alignment with this vision?
No, that's just too bad when that happens. Of course I do. I'm a minister. Of course I have advice. I really love vision. I love having some sense of vision. So I have a vision statement. For some people, maybe it's not a vision that you have for your life. Maybe it's just an affirmation that really lifts you up, that you use to connect. And so for me, a statement of vision that I can go back to when I feel myself out of sorts, or I feel myself caught up in the mundane, or even when I feel myself challenged or in judgment, like you were talking about, or not thinking very kindly about someone, I will invite myself as a part of my practice to take a deep breath and to go within and remember my vision. And my personal vision is I serve the love that God is. And then I learned in my community in Arizona some really important questions to ask myself. The first one being, am I living that vision right now? Am I serving the love that God is by the way I'm thinking about that person, or by the way I'm acting, or by my sense of disconnect, or by my state? And if I'm not, how can I get back to center? And a lot of times just asking myself the question, am I in alignment with my vision? Remembering my vision will bring me right back into that centered place. And then there were two other questions that we would use in my community in Arizona. Once getting clear, am I living the vision right now? We would ask, am I I feeling forced? Am I doing something that's out of alignment with who I say that I am? Which often for me, I know, is I'm forcing myself to show up for that thing that I don't really want to show up for. I'm forcing myself to do something or have a relationship or go in a different direction or make a decision that isn't really in alignment with my vision. And then the third question that we would ask ourselves would always be, does it fit the vision? Does it feel forced? And then we would ask ourselves, what can I do to get back in alignment? How can I get back into alignment with my vision? And is there any step I can take right now? Any words I can say? Do I need to pray? Do I need to meditate? Do I need to have a conversation? What are some of those practices? So those are the ones for me.
I love it. You know, one of the crummy things about standing on stages is I can't take notes. Those are so good. If somebody write those down for me. Those are so good. And for
I'll write them down for you.
For me, I don't usually operate with a personal vision statement per se. My commitment is always to try and live my values and my virtues and to follow them wherever they lead me in my life. But a question that I sometimes like to stop and ask myself, especially if I'm struggling, it's whose vision am I living in? Or whose eyes am I living in? Am I living in the eyes of a critic out there? The imagined eyes of someone I'm trying to win approval from? A past, more limited version of myself? Or am I living in the vision in the eyes of the sacred? And that's where I always want to go, because not only does that allow me to live more in love, but it helps me to be seen and to receive and to know that I am an expression of God, that I am loved by God, that I am worthy. And no matter where I am or how challenging it may be, I know that if I can live in that vision, I can get through anything.